Good evening and welcome to another session of the online Bible study on the book of First Thessalonians and also our home prayer meeting. Now, we would love to pray for you. So, if you have any prayer concerns or prayer requests, you may send us a private message or write it in the comments below. For our study of the Word of God this evening, let me turn your attention to First Thessalonians chapter 3, and today we'll focus our study on verse number 8. Now, for the past few weeks, we had been looking at the ministry lessons that we can learn from our Apostle Paul as he relays the events that transpired in the ministry to the Thessalonians which he had. Now, we had mentioned a few weeks back that the Apostle Paul wrote in this segment of First Thessalonians in a semi-formal manner and following a discourse and narrative, or a narrative and discourse pattern. Now, last week, we've talked about the existing communication lines between the ministers of the gospel and the people whom they ministered to. And we had also warned about gossip. Tonight, we'll be looking at the fulfillment that ministers of the gospel have. So let's go back to our passage in First Thessalonians chapter 3. Let's go back to our passage and we would see the context by which the Apostle Paul had in writing First Thessalonians chapter 3 verse 8, which is our passage for consideration tonight. Now, the Apostle Paul had relayed early in First Thessalonians chapter 2 how they had been beset by troubles in Thessalonica and are actually driven out of Thessalonica by unbelieving Jews who stirred up the unbelieving Gentiles. If you want to learn more about what happened and what transpired during that time, you may want to read again Acts chapter 17. Now, the Apostle Paul was truly desirous to return to the Thessalonians. Nevertheless, as he mentioned in 1 Thessalonians chapter 3, he was hindered by Satan. The Apostle Paul, therefore, for this reason, is very desirous to hear of the Thessalonians' faith. Now, let us go back to our passage and let's read 1 Thessalonians chapter 3 verse 1 as he writes with great emotion these words. I pray that as we read it and you follow with your eyes, that you would see and feel the weight of the burden that the Apostle Paul was feeling. Join me in reading 1 Thessalonians chapter 3 verse number 1 says this. Wherefore, when we could no longer forbear, we thought it good to be left at Athens alone. Now I pray you can feel the weight of that wording. Paul said, we could no longer forbear. Now the King James Tagalog Bible expresses it in this way. He said, sa dahilang ito nang hindi na namin kayang tiisin. That's weighty. That's very weighty. The Apostle Paul repeated the same wording in verse 5. Now follow me with your eyes. It says, for this cause, when I could no longer forbear. In verse 1, it's Paul and company. In verse 5, it becomes personal. When I could no longer forbear. Paul says, I sent to know your faith, lest by some means the tempter have tempted you, and their labor be in vain. Now that verse expresses the distress of the Apostle Paul that for some reason and some means, the tempter would have tempted the Thessalonian believers in allowing and causing them to be moved by the afflictions and the tribulations that they were appointed thereunto and were taught by Apostle Paul and company to expect. Now, this weight of the distress that the Apostle Paul was carrying, therefore, Apostle Paul sent Timothy to know of their faith. Now, that was Paul's primary concern, the Thessalonians' faith. I want us to read verses 6 to 8 to see what happened next. Okay, First Thessalonians chapter 3, verses 6 to 8 says this. But now, when Timotheus came from you unto us, and brought us good tidings of your faith and charity, and that ye have good remembrance of us always, desiring greatly to see us, as we also to see you. Therefore, brethren, we were comforted over you in all our affliction and distress by your faith. Now, hold on. The Apostle Paul and company received good tidings from Timothy of the Thessalonians' faith, plus their charity and their affection, which were a plus for the Apostle Paul. Now, all of this climaxes in our passage for tonight that we feel the sigh of relief by the Apostle Paul after receiving the good news. Verse 8 reads this, For now we live if ye stand fast in the Lord. For now we live if ye stand fast in the Lord. Did you feel that sigh of relief from Paul and company? Did you feel the seeming weight of the burden of the Apostle Paul, fearing that some tempter may tempt the Thessalonians to be moved by these afflictions? But then when he received the good news, it's like the weight had been rolled off his shoulders, and he could say, For now we live. Do you see how fulfilled these ministers of the gospel are in hearing of the Thessalonians' faith? I want you to listen to it again. For now we live. The Apostle Paul and company, for Apostle Paul and company, it was worth it. It was worth the persecution from the unbelieving Jews that stirred the Gentiles to drive Paul and company from Thessalonica. It was worth it, for now we live, he says. It was worth the oppositions. It was worth the hindrances from the devil. It was worth the affliction, the tribulation, the troubles that the Apostle Paul and company faced. He said, For now we live. Why? What's the fulfillment for the minister of the gospel? Now let's continue the verse that says, For now we live, if ye stand fast in the Lord. That brings us to our question tonight. What would make ministers of the gospel truly happy? Last October, the Philippines celebrated what's called the Pastor's Appreciation Month. Now, I don't know if this is a global thing or a global event, but Facebook's timeline is full of pastors being honored, some pranked, and appreciated. But this makes us ask the question truly, what makes a pastor, what makes a minister of the gospel truly happy? Or should I say, what should make a pastor truly happy? What is the ministers of the gospel greatest fulfillment and joy? What would make us say, For now we live? Now, ministry is never an easy task. It's full of afflictions, tribulations, oppositions, hindrances, troubles, burdens. Name it. A pastor will have it. And we cannot simply just do a TikTok making light of it, and making fun of it, because the truth is, we are in a war. It's no laughing matter. Some may make it one, but it's no laughing matter. But what would really and truly make a pastor say, For now we live? Our goal tonight is to show you, as a minister of the gospel, if you're listening tonight, what is the minister of the gospel's greatest fulfillment? And if you are a believer, what would make your pastor truly happy? Our prayer for you tonight is for you to see that pastors are very happy when believers stand in the gospel, with partners of the gospel, and for the gospel. Following the Apostle Paul's example, we declare, "For now we live, if ye stand fast in the Lord." Now, what exactly does it mean for believers to stand fast in the Lord? Now, interestingly, the phrase stand fast occurs 6 times in the Pauline epistles. Now, join me tonight as we explore and study those occurrences and see the following